Stammering Association for Women in India. And we're here to interview John Harrison. I believe we're going to go around the room. Sorry, Cynthia.
Patterson y estoy representando a la Asociación de Mujeres de la India y estamos aquí para conversar con John Harrison.
I believe we're going to go around and there's 11 people who want to introduce themselves.
Hay 11 personas que van a presentarse esta vez.
Those 11 people know who they are?
¿Esas 11 personas saben quiénes son las que se van a presentar?
Hey, Neil, I can go first. So my name's Carl Coffey, and I'm a board member for the National Stuttering Association in the United States. It's really good to be with everyone here today.
Hola, soy Carl y soy miembro de the Stuttering Foundation, right? Of America, la Fundación Americana de la Tartamudez. Y muy feliz de estar aquí.
¿Querés que siga yo, Cynthia? Bueno, hola a todos, yo soy Danisa Álvarez y estoy representando junto a 4 compañeros a Argentina. Y somos Tartamudez.
Hi, she says she's Danisa, she's from the association from Argentina, and she is here with other 4 stutters from Argentina too.
Well, buenos dias. I've just exhausted most of my Spanish, but that's the best I can do.
Es lo mejor que puede decir. Ya acabó con sus frases, parece, y es lo que puede decir en español. Buenos días.
Hey. Hey.
Cynthia.
Sí.
¿Me presento en nombre de la comunidad?
Sí.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Leonardo Angulo, soy de Santiago de Chile y soy miembro de la comunidad chilena de Tartamudez. Agradecemos muchísimo la invitación que se nos hizo y es un gusto estar con usted, don John Harrison. Gracias.
He's Leo from the Stuttering community of Chile, and he's happy to be here, and he feels grateful being here in this meeting.
Wow,
Thank you, Harrison.
Nice to have you here.
Un gusto tenerte aquí, Leo.
Cynthia, me presento. Hola a todos, muy buenos días. Soy Joan Gallego, represento a la comunidad de personas que tartamudean en Colombia. Un placer estar con ustedes hoy. Y hoy nos acompañan Edwin Macías, Sebastián Vanegas, Karen Rodríguez y Joan Medina en representación a Colombia.
Hello, my name is Joan from Colombia. I represent people who started in Colombia. There are also 4 more Colombian people like Edwin, Sebastián, Karen, and John Medina. Right?
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. Guys, hi. My name is Ahmad, and I am founder of Pakistan Stammering Foundation. And today I am presenting here ASU. ASO is Asian Association for Stammering Organizations. Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Sourab. Él es de Pakistán y, bueno, representa a la Asociación de Tartamudez de Pakistán y también a la Asociación de Asia de Tartamudez.
Yo, por favor. Mi nombre es Michel, soy de Perú. Le presento conjunto a mis compañeros Cynthia, José Alberto, Bruno Villegas y Jean-Pierre al país de Perú, a las personas con tartamudez. Para mí es un gusto y un placer poder estar el día de hoy y poder escuchar y aprender de John Harrison. Les iba un saludo fraterno de mi parte. Gracias.
Su nombre es Michel, él es de Perú y es un representante también de Perú, una persona que tartamudea, y nos acompañan también de Perú otras personas como José Alberto, Bruno, Jean-Pierre y quien les habla, Cynthia. Está encantado Michel de... ¡Ah! ¡Perdón! I'm sorry. I got lost. I feel ashamed. Sorry, I got confused. I have to tell in English. Well, he is Michel from Peru, and there are a lot of people. There are also other people from Peru, like Jose Alberto, Bruno, Jean-Pierre, and me, Cynthia, and he's very happy to be here and learn from you, John Harrison.
Well, it's a pleasure.
Cynthia, I was wondering why you were translating Spanish back to Spanish.
I'm sorry.
Very good.
Sorry.
I think there's about 4 more people to go. We've got...
Well, could I introduce myself, please? Well, I'm Christine, from the UK, and well, and I'm a trustee of British Stammering Association, stammer, which is well, our which is our great new campaign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ella es Christine de United Kingdom, del Reino Unido. Es representante de la Asociación Británica de Tartamudez. Y bueno, mencionó algo acerca de una campaña que están haciendo.
I believe we have to hear from Cheryl King from Scotland, Anita Bloom from Sweden, Lisa Wilder from Canada, and Sanal Thaku from India.
Hi, I am Cheryl King, and I'm a trustee of the Scottish Stammering Network. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and to meet John Harrison. I've read your book and it gave me the pieces of the puzzle. I never thought it was just about my speech, so it's a pleasure to be here. And I believe you're coming along to one of our groups in October.
Yes.
Oh, me. I am?
Yeah, John.
Es Cheryl de la Asociación de Escocia. Ha leído el libro de John Harrison y al leerlo pudo comprender que ella sabía que no era solo el habla, sino era algo mucho más que el habla. Entonces eso le ayudó a descubrir esas piezas y bueno, piensa, que me parece que hay un congreso, una actividad en octubre y piensa, bueno, asistir.
How many people do we have online right now? 14?
47.
47.
47.
And from all over the world. I'll tell you, I grew up in at a time when there was none of this.
Can I speak?
I'm still in awe of what can be done electronically or with the internet and stuff. And especially it's good now because I'm not very mobile anymore. But as long as I have my laptop and Skype, I can talk to anybody anywhere. I think this is just terrific.
So now, did you want to go?
Hello, everyone. Can I speak now?
Yes, sure, please.
Sonal Thakur from Savi, the founding member of Savi from India. And thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you would like this meetup.
Ella es Sonal de la Asociación de la India, de Mujeres de la India, y está agradeciendo a todos por estar aquí.
We just have to hear from Lisa Wilder and Anita Bloom. Anita Bloom.
Can I speak? My name is Anita Bloom, and I live in Sweden, but I'm born Dutch. I am very impressed by this group of people, gathering people from all over the world, especially as women who stutter are a minority within a minority. And I got to know John Harrison from a workshop at the World Congress in Australia, and he gave me the joy to talk, and I've been talking ever since. So thanks a million, John.
My pleasure.
Es Anita Bloom de Suecia, pero nació en Holanda. Mencionó que conoció a John Harrison y le dio como que ese gusto por querer hablar. No sé si algo más mencionó César.
No, estamos bien ahí.
Lisa Wilder, is there Lisa Wilder here? No, maybe not. Okay, we'll start without her. Okay, John, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I'm sure you've heard many of them before, so if you can sound surprised like you've never ever heard these questions before, that would be fantastic.
I'll be more than happy.
Menciona que va a decir va a hacer una serie de preguntas y que seguramente ya las ha escuchado antes, pero que se muestre sorprendido como si nunca las hubiera escuchado.
Yeah. I'll have to remember to talk in only two sentence bursts, so you
Va
can
a recordar decir 2 oraciones y hacer una pausa.
Just briefly, who is John Harrison?
That is a very good question that I have been asking for 85 years, more or less. God, how do I answer that? Well,
it doesn't have to be stutter related.
Okay. I was born in New York. I started stuttering when I was 3 years old. My mother and my grandmother went to Europe for 6 weeks. And when I came back, so my mother told me, I took my mother out into the garden and I said, Mommy, look at the flowers. And that was age 3. And that was the first time I stuttered. My mother did not waste any time. She sent me to the Hospital for Speech and Hearing Disorders in New York City. And I don't remember anything about what they did, but they did give me a medal. I think I wrote this down somewhere. A medal, and on one side of the medal it said slow, and on the other side it said easy. And as far as I know, that medal did not help me in any way, but during the time I wore that medal, I was never once attacked by vampire bats. Not once.
Cynthia, good luck translating all of that.
Bueno, él ha vivido su gran parte de su vida, 85 años, tratando de descubrir quién es, porque fue la pregunta, ¿quién es John Harrison? Él nació en Nueva York y empezó a tartamudear a la edad de 3 años, en una situación especial donde su mamá, donde él le dijo a su mamá una vez, fuera de la casa, mamá, y ahí empezó a tartamudear en la palabra mamá. Fue ahí que la mamá le dio una moneda en donde decía fluidez, y bueno, me parece que fue algo así, que le dio una moneda, o le dijo que le iba a dar una moneda. John Harrison, you told us that your mom, at that time, when you were 3, she gave you a medal, right? A medal.
No, it was the National Hospital for Speech and Hearing Disorders in New York City, where they took me.
Ajá. Entonces, bueno, lo llevaron a un lugar donde podía tener sus terapias y ahí le indicaron que le iban a dar una medalla. Sí, no sé, me mencionó un par de ideas más. Otra idea es que yo vaya, como Bruno me está dando alguna idea, como que puedo ir escribiendo en el chat. No sé si estaría bien para los latinos. para no perder la hilación de la conversación, porque sí, él está narrando y difícilmente puede hacer esas pausas porque está contando una experiencia. Entonces, ¿sí? ¿Les parece bien? A partir de ahora tal vez puedo ir como que escribiendo en el chat algunas ideas. ¿Sí?
One other thing I would like to mention that I remembered when I was about 5 years old, my mother offered to pay me $1 a day if I could talk without stuttering. But I don't think I ever collected even $1.
You obviously weren't money hungry back in those days.
Did you
Okay, John, here's some easier.
The sound got really funny. Try it again.
Here's some easier questions.
Yeah.
What do you think of the term stuttering or stammering?
Oh, I think the term is unfortunate. And for a long time now, I have been trying to get people not to use the word stuttering or stammering because it means too many things in too many situations. What I have discovered through many things that I've done. Well, let me jump ahead. Let me jump back a little bit. When I came to California, it was at a very fortunate time because people were experimenting with who they are and lifestyles and things. And there was a lot of experimentation in terms of who am I? Why do I feel what I do? Drugs, people living in communes. People were doing all kinds of things. The idea of being more genuine, connected with who they were. And that's when I ran away from home at the age of 24 from my father's business, and I came to San Francisco. This was the world that I entered, and it was, for me, a very fortunate world. You want to translate?
I'm writing in Spanish in the chat box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you want me to pause for translation or not?
Let me ask the other people, because another idea is to write while you are speaking, but I don't know. Some people is saying that it's okay, but I don't know what is the opinion of the other ones.
I'm not sure I found. Is that a question of some sort?
No. Well, there are two options. One option is that you can tell your story or answer the questions, and I can write the translation in the chat box. The other option is that you when you answer the questions, you make some pauses and then I translate it. But I don't know what is the best idea, because it's the first time we are doing something like that, and I don't know if you have experience about it, or someone here, to make it easy for everyone and to make it maybe comfortable also for everyone.
It would be easier, I think, if I could talk and maybe you did the translation later, because this is all being recorded, correct?
Oh, ok. Bueno, John Harrison, yo le propuse, hay dos opciones. Le estaba diciendo que hay dos opciones para llevar a cabo esta reunión y una de ellas es que él hable, responda y yo vaya traduciendo y escribiendo en el chat la respuesta, aunque se puede perder las respuestas porque hay muchas respuestas o comentarios. Por otro lado, la otra opción es que él hable y haga pausas y yo puedo traducir, pero John está mencionando que es como esto queda grabado, que yo lo puedo traducir después. No lo sé, porque es la primera vez que hacemos algo así, le mencionaba y que, bueno, la opción que dio John es esa, que como queda grabado, pero yo creo que tal vez como estamos aquí varios asistentes latinos, podría ser mejor hacer la traducción de alguna de las dos primeras opciones.
Ahí está hablando
creo yo
Anita
que
en
quizás
el
una...
chat.
Decía que quizás una de las cosas importantes también es qué tal te está yendo a ti, o sea, escribiendo la traducción mientras John habla. No sé, quizás se te está complicando, ¿no? O si lo puedes hacer acá, ¿no? ¿Cómo lo ves tú?
Ajá. Bueno, es que es el tema de las pausas. Y si no hay estas pausas es bien difícil traducir, entonces para escribir yo creo que no hay problema, pero se puede perder para ustedes la respuesta en el chat, porque hay bastantes mensajes.
Sí,
no sé, también...
se van mezclando los mensajes, ese es el tema, si es por chat.
Ajá. Entonces sería como que mejor simultáneo. ¿Sí? ¿César?
Sí, como
Yo creo
habían
que sí,
dicho las
Cynthia,
chicas.
que sería
Sí.
lo mejor, más
Claro,
didáctico sería, porque si no se pierde mucho. En la medida que vos puedas llevarlo, buenísimo. Y después si se puede traducir, genial.
All right. You'll have to tell me when I can speak again, so.
I'm sorry, John.
No, it's okay. I just don't know very much Spanish, so I don't know what's happening.
We were discussing about the best way to communicate. So yeah, because
it's a challenge for sure.
Yes, it's a challenge. Es un reto. And maybe we can try speaking and having pauses to make the translation. Let's try.
I think it's most convenient for all of us, when you write down the Spanish translation when John Harrison speaks, because otherwise we will have a meeting for a very long time.
I think so.
That's the best plan.
I think the problem with pausing also is John has some really good stories, and it's tough to say 2 lines, pause, you translate it, and then continue on that story. So stories are better told in one hit.
Sí. Yes, that's what I was thinking, and that it would be very difficult for him to pause and then remember where was I, what did I tell, in what point, I don't know. So I think it will be better maybe write it in the chat box, but what about making some, maybe I can write it in the chat box, but I will ask you please to not to write in English in the chat box while I'm writing, so the message won't be very confused for people who is reading in Spanish, and then they see a message in English and then in Spanish, so it will be better in that way. To write it in the chat box, and also like we can communicate better, and we're not going to spend more time in the translation. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let me please say it in Spanish. Bueno, creo que lo mejor sería escribir la respuesta de John, porque él cuando cuenta sus historias es difícil hacer las pausas y que después pueda él tal vez recordar dónde se quedó. Y lo que les he pedido es que mejor por ese momento nadie escriba en el chat, solo yo, para que no se pierdan los mensajes y no se confundan con los mensajes de inglés y en español, y así puedan leer de forma corrida. ¿Ok? Sí, hemos tal vez llegado a esa conclusión que tal vez pueda hacerlo mejor. Ok.
All right.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
If there is one thing that I would like to get across today, it is that the word stuttering or stammering is not very effective in terms of communicating what is going on. And to give you an example of what is going on, I want to take something out of my book, an example. If you've read the book, maybe you'll remember this. Let's say that you have a favorite horse that you have raised ever since it was a colt, little horse. And the horse is now 14 years old or 12 years old. And every day you love to ride in the countryside on the horse. And one day you go out with the horse and the horse trips and falls and breaks its leg severely. And you know that the only humane thing to do is to take out your pistol that you carry with you when you go out in the country, is to take the pistol and to shoot the horse between the eyes. And so you're standing there and the horse is lying down. And this is not easy, because you really love this horse. Ever since you were little, you have ridden the horse. And the horse is looking at you like you're an old friend. And yet the only thing that is humane that you can do is to raise the pistol and kill the horse. So you take out your pistol and you walk in front of the horse and you point the pistol right between the eyes of the horse, and you go to pull the trigger and your finger freezes. Trying to pull the trigger. Can't pull it. Well, maybe if I shake it. I can't pull the trigger. Now, my question to you is, do I have a problem with my finger?
No.
No.
You're clear about that. You don't have a finger problem. Well, of course you have a finger problem, because if you didn't have a finger problem, you should be able to pull the trigger, right?
Technically. Just a note too, John, we can't see your video feed.
You can't see my video?
No.
Really, I can see my video.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for telling me. Okay. So I'll have to do it verbally. So the question is, do you have a problem with your finger? Should you go to a finger expert and have them do an analysis of why you can't pull the trigger on the pistol? I mean, it makes sense, right? You know, can't pull the trigger, can't move the finger, problems with the finger. Well, as you can see, this is an absurdity, because the problem is that on one hand, you want to pull the trigger. On the other hand, you really don't want to pull the trigger. So basically, what you have are two forces of equal strength pulling in opposite directions. And that, folks, is the best definition I've ever been able to come up with for a speech block. That the problem is not speech. The problem is one of holding back. And I keep trying to encourage people not to talk about stuttering or stammering as much as they talk about holding back. I've taught public speaking classes, not just for people who stammer, but for the general public as well in San Francisco. And I've used the exercises in the workshop that you can find also in the book. For example, people who stammer, who stutter, tend not to move. I'm sure you can all identify with this. You know, if you have to stand up in front of a group, do you kind of relax and move around the room and, you know, look at all the people? Or do you tend to carve out a 1.5 foot space on the floor, which is your safe area, and in which you stand? This is what happens with most people who stammer. We don't move. So what I encourage people to do in these workshops is to move around the room, to use the room in a way that they normally would not, and do it in an exaggerated way. So I have people leaning against the wall, looking out the window. This is all while they're making a talk. Looking out the window, lying on the floor, walking in the back to the snack table to find some snacks, even while they're speaking. Doing anything that says they are in their home, in their space, and this is comfortable. Now, I'm not suggesting that if you were hired to make a talk that you would do this. But if you're trying to get over a fear of speaking, it helps to have times to practice, workshops to go to, for example, where you can do things that you normally don't do when you stand in front of people and speak. In chapter 8 of my book, I have 10 exercises, each of which picks out another thing that helps you to own the space that you are in and make it yours. And that was something that I had to learn to do. I didn't do this when I spoke. I stood in the same place. I didn't move my arms very much. I didn't make the experience mine. I was just trying to get through the experience.
John,
So,
as you may
what?
know,
yeah, hang on one second. So I've been trying to get people, whenever possible, to stop using the word stuttering or stammering and to substitute the words hold back or holding back, so that instead of saying, I went to the store to get a jar of pickles, and I blocked on the word P. Instead of saying I stammered on the word pickles, I encourage people to say I held back. Because in practically every instance that I can think of, the problem is one of holding back. I spent the early part of my life holding back. I didn't get angry. I didn't get loud. I wasn't very assertive. I was constantly holding back. And if you think back to the situation of trying to shoot a horse with your finger on the trigger of the gun, and you're trying to squeeze the trigger just like you're trying to talk in a situation, and you can't squeeze the trigger, it's not because you have a problem with your finger. And when you have a problem speaking, it is not because you have a problem with your speaking muscles, at least in 95% of the cases. The problem is one of holding back. So I try and encourage people to use the word holding back to begin to focus their attention on what is really going on. All right, let me take a break and drink some more water.
John, just give your USB cable a shake too and just see if that fixes the camera.
Say that again?
However your camera is plugged into your laptop, give that a bit of a shake.
I don't I'm using the camera in the laptop.
Ah, okay.
It's not separate. So you don't have any picture at all from me?
I can't see you. Can anyone else see John?
No.
Well, that's strange because I can see me.
Well,
on
that's the most
screen.
important thing, John.
With all the separate boxes, one of those boxes is of me.
Down the bottom, John, down the bottom of the screen, the bottom left-hand corner, there's a, there you are, you're back. We can see you again.
I'm back?
Yes. Yay.
Well, I didn't do anything.
All right. Maybe it was just a week.
All right. Don't argue with what works, right?
That's right.
I'll drink to that.
Just on your analogy of those workshops about moving around, I'm sure that you know Dave Maguire quite well, and
I know.
Part of the Maguire programs is we have Harrison workshops.
Yeah,
and
they incorporated those into the training, which I thought was
and they're
great.
fantastic. And we learn to move around the screen and get in close to people and use our hands and just get as animated as we can to let ourselves go. And it's a fantastic exercise, really worthwhile doing.
But you need to understand why it works. And the reason why it works is that stuttering is all about holding back. And when you do these exercises, they are all focused on what to do when you want to let go. So this is, people have turned this into the most obscure problem, I'll tell you, over the last 5,000 years. Nobody knows what causes it, and they're looking for the genetic factors and all this stuff. You don't have to do that.
Do you have a simple
It's not
definition?
that complicated.
Do you have a simple definition of what is stuttering? Your definition of stuttering?
Yes. My simple definition is holding back.
Cool.
That's basically what it is. Trying to talk while you're holding back. Can you see me now?
Yes.
You can see my picture.
Yes.
So do this. Lock your hands. Now I want you to pull your hand to the right. And as you pull the hand to the right, I want you to pull your left hand to the left with equal strength. What you are now experiencing is a block. Two forces of equal strength pulling in opposite directions. That's not very obscure, and that's not very difficult to understand. When you want to say, what is the time? And you have an issue about saying time because you have to be assertive, because the guy you're talking to is your boss, or the person is someone who you're not comfortable with, and you say, can you tell me that time, two forces of equal strength pulling in opposite directions. The problem is that we are not aware of how we hold back. It usually starts very early, and it happens on a feeling. There's another thing to consider too. I just wrote a paper on this and sent it to somebody around. We have two different kinds of control systems. We have a conscious control system, and we have an unconscious control system. And when these two control systems get in conflict, then you have a block. Or in golf, for example. I've played golf, not for years, but I used to play. And I would go out to the practice range and I would practice hitting my golf shots over and over again. And I'd be able to hit fairly straight. And then I'd go out on the course. And there was one hole that had a little pond, a little water hazard, as they say in golf, on the right. And it would always spook me out. I would get really nervous because I didn't want to drop the ball in the water. So what I would almost always do on that hole, I would swing through, and at the last moment, I would end up pulling the ball to the left and hooking the ball, not hitting a straight shot. Two forces of equal strength pulling in opposite direction. On one hand, I wanted to hit a straight golf shot, but because there was danger over here, it was very difficult for me not to give in and to play it safe, pull the ball to the left. And if you understand something about how this works, you'll understand something very basic about speech blocks.
I have a similar analogy with that, John. I'm an old motocross rider, and when you're riding off-road, if you see a rock up ahead that you don't want to hit, the more that you focus on that rock, the more likely you're going to hit it.
Right, because you have two control systems. You have the conscious control system, and then you have the unconscious control system. And when they get in conflict, that's when you have a block. It's not a big genetic doodah that everybody wants to say it is. It's just not that. You have two control systems. One control system is able to do amazing things. I mean, I don't know how somebody learns to dance the lead role in Swan Lake, but can you imagine what they have to learn, all the muscle memory, all the memorizing that they have to learn in a 2-hour ballet? That's a lot of stuff. And so they have to end up trusting the system to do what it is designed to do and will do if you practice enough so that you know what you want to do. I'll give you an example of how this worked. My blocking in my speech, when I came to California, I ended up doing a lot of what you call personal growth programs of one sort or another. And one of the things I did was I took acting classes. Now, there were two things that scared me when I was little. One was speaking, and the other was memorizing. I was sure that I couldn't memorize anything, and the idea of having to stand up in front of a group and recite something that I memorized without any notes to rely on or lean on was terrifying to me. But I was interested in finding out about who I was and why I felt the way I did. So I signed up for acting class. And I remember the first class. The acting teacher it was a big room. There were about 40 people in the room, and everybody drew a slip with a little description of the scene that they had to act out. And so in the beginning, I was all cranked up. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to do it. And it was 7 o'clock. I'm going to do it. And it was 8 o'clock. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then it was 9 o'clock. And I thought, well, I'm going to do it. And it was 10 o'clock. And at 11 o'clock at night, after I was really tired and wanted to go home, it was my turn to do the scene. It was a monologue. So it was just me speaking. And I still can picture it. It was a big room. The teacher was on the other side of the room. There was a guy with a video camera. And she's going, 3, 2, 1, go. And I went to open my mouth and I could not remember a word. I mean, nothing. It was my biggest fear, and I'm in the middle of it. So I stood there for about 5 seconds. And I kind of relaxed and I looked at everybody and I said, for 35 years, I've had a fear of standing up in front of a group and not being able to remember anything about what I was supposed to say. And I looked around and I laughed and I said, what do you know? It just happened. And I laughed. And then everybody laughed. And when everybody laughed, magically, I remembered all the scene, all the lines from the scene that came back in my head. And I did the scene. And I was never very good at acting because I'm really not good at memorizing. But I'll never forget that. And that's the kind of thing that you have to do when you're getting over a scene. You have to allow yourself not to hold back.
John, would you?
This is a problem of holding back. I say it a lot. It's not a speech problem. It's not a genetic problem. It's a problem of holding back. And if you can learn not to hold back, you can learn to move your arm in the direction that you want it to go.
Do you think, John, that although stuttering is not a habit, does it form habits? Do we form that habit of holding back? Can stuttering fuel the habit of holding back, which feeds back into the stuttering itself?
Well, of course, because when you hold back, the fact is you're not aware that you're holding back. And that's the problem with this. You're not aware that you're holding back. When I go to shoot the horse and I can't pull the trigger, I'm not aware that I'm holding back. Or at least in this example, I'm not aware. I'm trying to squeeze that trigger. And there's obviously something wrong with my finger, right? Oh, God, really? I can't pull it. I have to go to a finger doctor. Have them figure out what the problem is. Well, you see what the problem is. You have an intention to do one thing. You have an intention to do another thing. And they operate at cross purposes. And that's called a block. And it's very simple. And for 5,000 years or so, people, speech therapists, everybody else, they don't get it. And
so what's the best way for us to stop holding back?
Find activities where you can let go, such as stammering self-help groups, Toastmasters, programs in which you can learn how to be silly and have fun. There are all kinds of things that are out in the world. There are self-development groups. There was a thing called the EST training, which is no longer around. But it was a 5-day training where they ran you through all kinds of experiences where you had to let go. And I came out of there just, even more in touch with who I was and the sides of me that I was uncomfortable expressing. But a lot of these things, are not obvious. The only thing that's obvious is the holding back. And so all of the focus is on the holding back, the speech blocks, the difficulties in saying a word. People don't understand that it is about holding back two systems of fighting for control. You have an automatic system. When you learn how to ride a bicycle, I assume everybody here can ride a bicycle. Do you remember when you learned?
No, I can't ride bike. I've never been able to. So, yeah. But there's something else there, perhaps, that I just don't have very good balance. But yeah.
Well, that could be, but you also may have difficulty in trusting it. When I learned to ride a bicycle,
possibly.
When I learned to ride a bike, hang on a second. My mouth is drying out. When I learned to ride a bike, I still remember it. My father took me out on the street for 2 days, and he ran alongside the bicycle, holding it up. And I was, wobbly and doing all this stuff for 2 days. And then we missed a day. And then the next day I went out and my father wasn't around, but the bicycle was. It was leaning against a small mound, a hill in the backyard. And I looked at it and I thought, I wonder if I can ride it without my father holding on. So I took a chance. I got on the bike, I pushed off, and I rode it. I rode it. But in order to do that, I had to have the 2 days of my father holding up the bike so I could train my automatic systems, my automatic control system to take over. See, we have 2 systems. We have an automatic system that you learn when you ride a bike and do anything automatically. And then you have a conscious control system. And when these systems come in conflict with each other, you can end up with a block. That makes sense?
Definitely. Can I just add to that, John? Do you think, just using that analogy of your dad holding the bike, for those people who have stuttered for most of their life and now we're trying to get them to let go and trust their mind, change their mindset.
Their mind and body, not just mind.
Do you think using some physical techniques like a full coastal breath, breathy tone, deliberate disfluency is kind of like your dad holding the bike to get them to speak, to get them to that point of confidence to then be able to change their mindset and their body?
I think there are various techniques. I think McGuire technique is one. I think that just being able to try things in a safe place. If you look in chapter 8 of my book, chapter 8 is an entire public speaking program. That was how the book started. The book started with the exercises in chapter 8 and one essay. That was the original book. And when I wrote that, I was thinking about what can you do to help to build the confidence that you need in order to stand up in front of a group and speak. Well, it helps to move rather than stay in one place. It helps to have vocal variety. It helps to have, it helps to feel like you own the ground that you're on and you own the room. So I devised exercises around each of these to psychologically give you the feeling that you're talking from your turf, your ground, your land, your turf. I like turf. And when you have a chance to train not your conscious control system, but your automatic control system. What my father was doing when he was holding the bike up. You train your automatic control system to let go and do things like this. But you have to do it in a safe place. If you don't have a safe place to do it, you're probably not going to do it. That makes sense?
Does to me.
Those who speak Spanish, did you get even a little bit of that?
Sí. John, what speech therapies did you go through when you were younger? Before you work things out yourself, did you try any other speech therapies?
No.
No?
No. I shouldn't say that. When I was 3.5 or 4, I went to the National Speech and Hearing, the National Hospital for Speech and Hearing Disorders in New York. And I have no idea what they did, except they gave me a little medal that said slow on one side and easy on the other. But as far as I know, I didn't learn anything. And then when I was about 17, I went back there. They had a group therapy. And I did that for about 6 weeks, once a week. And basically all we did was to meet and talk. They created a safe space where we could meet and talk about anything. And that's all I ever had. And all the other things that I found out was because when I went to California, there was this big focus on personal growth activities and programs. And I was a very uptight guy. It wasn't until I was in a group therapy setting when I was 29 years old that I ever looked at another adult human being and got angry at him. That's a long time. Never did it. Never trusted it. Was afraid to let go. So all the things that I did had to do with me as a person, not focusing on my speech, but me as a person. I needed to figure out how to trust myself and to let go and try things. I had very performance-oriented parents. My father ran an advertising agency. My mother was a kindergarten teacher when she was younger. But that's where I grew up. I didn't know people who went off and did crazy things or spoke off the top or did stuff like that. It was all very controlled. So my picture of life was controlled. And it's not anymore. But it was then.
So you're saying
And
these days you're a crazy wild man.
I had to give up. I had to give up the side of me that constantly wanted to hold back. Speech block, 2 forces of equal strength pulling in opposite directions.
At what age do you think you started to work this out?
I'm sorry, say that again.
At what age do you think you started to work this out?
Well, I ran away from New York to San Francisco when I was about 23. And I didn't go there to work out anything. I just wanted to get away. But because of all of the activities that were going on in California at that time, I ended up in lots of various trainings of one sort or another where I had to really trust in my ability to be me, which I never trusted. I never trusted my ability to be me. I was very much a performance-oriented person. And it was in one of these trainings, like I mentioned, that that I finally blew up and got angry at somebody. He was I still remember his name. It was Hal Fenton, and he was a movie double at times for Robert Mitchum. Those of you who remember old movie stars. But he was around the movie industry, and he liked baiting people. He liked pushing people. He liked getting them angry. And somehow he communicated that it was okay to get angry back at him. Up until then, I had never blown up or gotten angry at anybody. But he somehow communicated that it was okay to do that. And so I did that. And I liked it. Felt good. So I did a lot of things like that over a period of time.
So you were more working on you weren't necessarily working on your stuttering, you were just working on letting go as a person in whole.
I never worked on my stuttering. Ever. Because somewhere I knew that basically the problem was that I was holding myself back. And if I had to work on anything, go rather than hold back. The problem with speech therapy, most speech therapy misses, in my estimation, misses the point. Because of their understanding and their picture of what this problem is all about. I keep saying it is about holding back. If you walk away from this little session we're doing with nothing more than the idea that you're holding back at the same time as you're trying to let go, you will have learned something very important.
We know you've written a book and you're also famous for the stuttering hexagon. Which one did you start working on first?
The stuttering hexagon came about because in 1985, the San Francisco chapter of the National Stuttering Project, as it was called then, was having its first annual conference or national conference. I say national, it consisted of about 14 people, 13 of whom came from San Francisco and 1 from Seattle. But that was our national conference. To write something for that conference that we could do some activity. And that's when I wrote the first draft of the 10 public speaking exercises. And with that, I included one essay, and it was called On Overcoming Performance Fears, which is also in the book. And they were all insights into what performance fears are about. But that's how the book got started. It was 48 pages. It was printed on a dot matrix printer. Most of you are not old enough to remember what in the hell a dot matrix printer was. But that's how the book got started. And as I kept learning more and more about the problem, I was the editor of Letting Go, which was the NSA's monthly magazine, or every other month magazine. And so as I learned something new, I would write another article. And I was also on some stuttering discussion groups as well, which were very helpful. And so I would post them on that. And after a while, they collected, and in 2011, I put out the final version of the book, which, by the way, is now in French, Spanish, Russian, and now being translated into Dutch.
Wow. If you could go back in time and rewrite that book, would you change anything?
Not a word. Not a word.
So when you were writing the book, you weren't worried that it may have been a flop?
I was not trying to write a success. I was just trying to get down my understanding of what this problem was about in a way that other people might benefit from it. I was not looking to write a successful book. In fact, the book was written over the course of about 25 years. I'm sorry, you were saying.
Someone else had their microphone on. Just on the hexagon, how do you think the hexagon works in relation to not holding back? Can you explain the hexagon for us?
Well, it became obvious to me after a certain point that this was not just a speech problem. This was a whole person problem, a system that involved 6 aspects of who you were. Your emotions, obviously, your perceptions, how you saw things, your beliefs, your intentions. What is your intention? If I have an intention to say ball at the same time as I have an intention not to say ball, I'm going to get into one of these things. Emotions, beliefs, intentions, physiological responses, what do people do when they block? And I can't remember the 6th one. It was the more general thing right now.
Beliefs,
But it was a
intention.
system.
beliefs, intentions, behaviors, emotions, perceptions, and physical state. Although I think they're Maguire terms, so one of them may be a little different to yours.
Is that a question? I'm not sure what I
was just reminding you what the 6 points of the hexagon were, but
what was the one I was missing?
I'm not sure which one you missed, but the 6 of
emotions, perceptions, beliefs, intentions, physiological responses,
behaviors.
Behaviors.
And behaviors. Oh, right. Okay. Well, obviously behaviors.
Which point do you think is the most important one to start at?
Probably emotions, because that's where I had the most difficulty. I was afraid to let go and find out who I was. You know, I grew up in a family that placed a lot of emphasis on appearance. I'm sure none of you have had that experience, but I certainly did. I'm kidding you. I did not grow up in a family where the emphasis was on having fun. The emphasis of my family was on appearance and in doing the right thing. That's something I know that a lot of you will identify with. And that's why I had to run away from New York and go to San Francisco. If I had stayed in New York, I would have ended up working in my father's business. I would have ended up with a house in the suburbs with the required 2.5 children and a dog, and I would have gone to a country club or something like that and played a lot of golf, and I would have been old at 50. But I knew that, so I had to get out. I literally ran away from home at the age of 23, 25.
Is that part of the reason why your mum lived for such a long life?
I don't know. Her sister also lived to like 98. I don't know why she did. She just did. My mom was a very self-contained woman. I don't know. She was my mom. I didn't try to figure her out too much, but she was her taste ran to the royal family in England. She liked that kind of look and feel, and the proper way of doing things. I mean, I can give you some choice words at this point in my life on the proper way of doing things. I would prefer just to do things. I mean, forget about the proper way to speak. I just want to speak. You know, I joined Toastmasters and was in Toastmasters for a long time. And that's one of the really good organizations. But not if you go into Toastmasters and make a life or death commitment never to stutter. You know, you go in, you can be who you want to be. And if you don't speak well, get off on not speaking well, but get off on speaking nonetheless. And find out what it's about. Find where the fun is. I like fun. And fun is not illegal, by the way. Unless it is, but that's something else.
And it can be free.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where Toastmasters is very good, because you know, hardly costs you anything.
Just on the Hexagon, I was speaking to your friend Jeff Johnston, and he said he remembers a quote from you, or he thinks it was from you. You should live by your intentions and not your expectations.
Absolutely.
So he always thought intentions was a good place to start.
Oh, it's very good. I ran my life really almost entirely by my expectations, which is, and when you do that, you give your power away to circumstances and to other people. When I went to California was when I suddenly changed that in my life. I started running my life by my intentions, and it saved my life, you know. And I went through a period after being out in California for a year. I was tired of working for this high-tech ad agency, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I remember being absolutely, totally lost. And I did a survey for people selling, marketing frozen foods. I did odd jobs. I was a full of brush man for a while, knocking on doors. I didn't know what I wanted. I kept thinking I wanted to find the career of my life. I wanted to have a sense of purpose and direction and know where I was going, but I couldn't do that because I didn't know where I was going. I hadn't done the things that would give me a clue as to what was true. So I went through some high anxiety periods where I didn't know what I was doing, but I still made a living. And I still looked for things that I wanted to do. Annie Bradbury knew me back in those days. When I was just getting involved with the National Stuttering Project. And, you know, I just didn't know. But there's a lot more in the way of supportive activities and programs now than there was back in 1983, which is when I was starting to do this stuff.
John, you're a big believer in self-actualization. Can you just explain, don't explain what self-actualization is, but try explain more the bad effect it'll have if you're not self-actualized?
Well, self-actualization only means that you have all of us are born with certain capabilities and interests and desires and abilities, and if you allow yourself to pursue them, you're going to end up with a more pleasurable life than if you get talked into working at jobs or doing things which have no meaning for you, which unfortunately a lot of people do. I mean, I like writing. I like figuring out stuff. You know, I'm a fairly smart guy, and I like to figure out why things work or why they are the way they are. That's just part of my personality. So when I found the National Stuttering Project, as it was called then, it was a no-brainer, is what I wanted to get involved with. And you know, the involvement went on for decades.
So if a severe stutterer, a young person has a severe stutter, and they come to you and they say, John, can you please help me? What would your approach be?
I would encourage them to see what resources were available to them where they lived. Of one's anything that would give them an opportunity to experience things without having to deal with major consequences. You know, activities that just involved you, so you could build up personal experience. I mean, that was what I wanted. I wanted personal experience. I didn't have that much personal experience. I had, you know, by the time I went off to university, I lived in a very proper, upper middle class, controlled environment. But I didn't know anything about anything. And it really wasn't until I got on a plane myself and left my entire life back in New York that things began to happen. They took time to happen, you know. There were times when I really wanted to go back, and I thought, I just can't go back. I got to find out who I am and what else there is out in the world.
And I think one of the problems...
It was a real life or death thing for me.
I think one of the problems for people looking for answers is they're always after that quick fix. Everyone's always after the cure or the quick fix.
Yeah. This is a problem that you live your way into. And with those kinds of problems, you have to live your way out of them. They're problems that are created through experience, and so you have to experience your way out of them. And if you try and do a quick fix by controlling speech, then you're just layering one layer of controls over another layer of controls, and you're twice removed from the experience of just being yourself. That makes sense?
Definitely. I know that speaking from experience with the the Maguire program and using a technique can become a trick in itself. And so I feel a lot of these techniques are just a segue to get you to stop holding back and build confidence to achieve what you've achieved. But certainly techniques work fantastically short term, but they can become a trick.
Well, you know, a good example of a speaker who learned Maguire technique and then took it from there is Alan Badminton. Those of you who know Alan. Alan went through the program, you know, the Maguire program, and he went with a passion. I mean, whatever they asked him to do, he did 3 times as many. I remember, I mean, street contacts. You know, people would go out and make 100 street contacts. Alan went out and made 300 street contacts. So he approached it with a passion. But Alan's a very, very good speaker. And this is a guy whose speech was so severe. He wore a device called an Edinburgh mask. Are any of you familiar with the Edinburgh mask? The Edinburgh mask was a device that involved a microphone to put over your vocal cords and a buzzer that fit in your ear. And every time you talked, the buzzer went, and literally blocked out the sound of your voice. And Alan wore it for 22 years. He was a policeman in Wales. And he wore it for 22 years. And then finally he retired from the police department. And then he had some kind of an accident where he couldn't wear the mask anymore. So suddenly he was thrown back on his own devices. And that's when he looked around and he found the Maguire program. And when Alan went through the Maguire program, you know, I think he mentioned, you know, the average person went out and did 50 street contacts or 100. He did 300, typically. He came to California and met a fellow from Australia, a friend who had been through the program. And they went up and down the coast, going to radio stations, talking up the Maguire program with the idea of maybe starting a program here. He was a very nervy guy, but he is now a marvelous speaker. This is a guy who couldn't talk for 23 years without having a going on in his ear.
That would be annoying.
I don't know how he stood it.
Here's something I heard from someone recently.
Yeah.
You've learned to, I'll use this phrase, you've learned to control your stutter and you're speaking fairly well. And then you get a smell of something from 20, 30 years ago and it triggers your memory and you stutter out of control. It takes you back to that point in time.
Yeah, well, again, I prefer not to use the word stutter. I realize that this is probably doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but it's, again, it's about holding back. And in that situation, there's a situation where somebody ends up having an experience or a memory of something that was scary or that was emotionally upsetting. And if they're not willing to deal with the emotions in the moment, then they end up holding them back. And that can easily lead to a speech block.
Mm.
And there you go.
Mm. We're at the 2-hour mark, so is there anyone who would like to ask a question?
By the way, the answer is 7. Whatever you ask me, the answer is 7. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think there's just one reason that we stutter or holds back, or do you think there might be several reasons that leads,
Good question.
to the fact that you stutter?
Good question. As far as I can see, it's all about holding back. If you had to say what you just said, and I was on the other side of a river, and you had to shout it out so I could hear you, do you think you'd find yourself blocking?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. When I speak and I want to be heard, then I start to have more fear, and then I have to, then I hold more back. But when I shout, I do not stutter.
Of course not. Because because you're no longer holding back. In a way that answers your own question. Now, the trick is to learn how to let go without having to shout. But when I've worked with people, especially in workshops, I would have people sometimes shouting. Well, most of the people in the workshops that I ran were for the general public, so they were not people who had stuttering or stammering problems. But the holding back, I'm trying to get people to stop using the word stammer. That is a much more accurate picture of what is going on. You know, I went to ask my boss for a raise, and I held back. I went to ask this good-looking girl for a date, and I held back. I went to the corner to get a brownie, and when the lady came over, I went to say brownie, and I held back. When you say stuttering, the focus is all on the execution, on the performance of what you're doing, but it's not on the energy that is driving the performance, which is holding back. You got to live with it. You have to live with this for a while, and you have to observe it. And then you have to be willing to experiment. But I know enough people who have done that to know that you can really change it.
John, one question someone wrote that they'd like to ask is,
yeah.
I kind of asked this anyway, but the person says, I would like to know what your biggest fear was when you started writing a book that might or might not impact other people with stuttering.
My fear?
Hmm.
Well, I was writing the book to impact people who had stuttering problems, so I didn't have any fears. I wanted to do that as effectively and efficiently as I could.
Hmm.
There was no performance issue involved in the creation of that book.
Hmm.
It was written over 25 years, by the way. Went through a number of different revisions and expansions.
We've lost your video feed again too, by the way, John, FYI. Another question, someone has asked,
yeah.
Can you give 5 best exercises post-therapy which may help us to maintain our fluency?
Well, it's all about letting go. And if you look at chapter 8 of the book on the speech exercises, they're all things that help letting go. I didn't write them as things that help fluency. All things that help letting go. It's all about letting go. I mean, if you want to, you know, I mean, I get boring after a while because I keep talking about letting go, and a lot of people want to talk about stuttering. But in a sense, there is no such thing as stuttering. Well, there is, you know, if you get your hand, you know, caught in the cookie jar when you're not supposed to, and you get flustered and your speech falls apart for a second, that's stuttering. And when you get stopped for speeding and, you know, the policeman says, you know, do you realize that you were doing 145? And your speech can fall apart. But that's stuttering, I guess, but that's because see, you have two systems. You have the automatic system, and I wrote a paper on this, and I just sent it into the powers that be. Whoops. Well, what am I trying to say here? I lost my thread. I don't know. Did I answer it?
I'm not sure. I forget. I forget what the question was myself.
Well, ask it again if I didn't.
I think it was 5 techniques to keep your fluency, but it was more so just stop holding back.
See, everybody is focused on fluency.
Hmm.
And when you focus on fluency, you focus on performance. And speech should not be a performance. Speech is about communication. It's about connecting with people.
Yeah.
And if you keep making it a performance, you're playing into the very thing that you should be looking to dissolve and get rid of and change.
Hmm.
You know, the whole field of speech pathology is kind of screwed because they focus on the superficial manifestations of the problem, which is fluency.
Mm.
That's why I'm trying to get people that I work with or coach, to use the words hold back.
Mm.
Because, I can enter into a fairly intelligent discussion with someone who's having difficulty if we focus on the whole issue of holding back rather than fluency. Fluency is not where it's at.
Mm. I have another question here from someone, John. Now,
Yeah.
I know you don't like the term stuttering, but they've asked, do you consider yourself a stutterer, or what other adjective would you use? And do you consider that you cured yourself? And why don't you like using the word stuttering or stutterer?
Oh, thank you. Okay, give me the first part of it again.
Do you consider yourself a stutterer, or what other adjective would you use? So instead of a stutterer,
No.
if you were a stutterer, but you don't like that word, what other word would you use?
I wouldn't use a word. You're trying to get me to categorize myself.
That's what I thought you'd say.
No, I'm not a stutterer.
Do you consider yourself to be cured?
Yeah, I guess if you want to call it, cured, I don't have any speech issues and haven't for years. I don't worry about whether I can say a word or not, so. But I don't like the word cure because that sounds like it was a disease.
Mm.
And I keep trying again to get people to use the words hold back, which doesn't make it a disease, it makes it into something else.
Just trying to scroll this other question. Hopefully no one's not asking me any questions in Spanish because I don't read Spanish. My mouse is playing up a bit. Here we go. Do you feel a patient should go through a mental state test before taking a course? Most time we rush to give therapy when the patient's state of mind is not great. In other words, it's high or low in positive frame, high expectation, performance fear, or professional stress. Did that make sense?
I think so. I think I know what you're asking, but can you ask it again?
Do you feel a patient should go through a mental state test before taking a course, just to make sure that they're not...
I missed the word. Patient go through a mental...
Mental state test.
Oh, mental state test.
Hmm.
How do you test mental states?
Don't know.
I mean, what are you testing for?
Hmm.
You'd have to be specific as to what you're testing for, I think, in order for the answer to be meaningful.
Yeah. Well, they've mentioned professional stress, but I don't know. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions at this stage?
Anita Blum, you had a whole bunch of really great pictures on your website. I just want you to know. I love
Cynthia,
looking at them.
are there any questions that the Spanish people are asking?
Yeah. If you have questions, feel free to email me at any time. I love connecting with people on email or Skype or Zoom or whatever the technology is doing at the moment. I like connecting with people. I like talking to people. So it'll never be an imposition if you want to just connect and, as we say in New York, schmooze.
Here's another question, John. Do you think we need to make society more conscious about stuttering?
I guess so. I guess it doesn't hurt that people know that some people have this problem. I guess so. I'm more concerned with the people who are doing the stuttering, so-called, than the other people out there.
Hmm.
I mean, anything that you can do to make it easier. I think if you're working in a company that it's really helpful if you can talk candidly about your speech problem, if in fact you have the problem and it is a problem. Talk openly about it. Most people don't react to what you're talking about. They react to your discomfort with what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought of including the linguistic factor in the stuttering hexagon?
I don't know what the linguistic factor is.
Another person would like to know, what is your family's opinion about stuttering today?
Well, what family I have left, you know, I'll be 86 on my next birthday, so there's not many of them around. Not many of them around, you know. I have a younger sister. She seems to be happy with it, so she's about 74. It doesn't sound like a younger sister, does it?
As long as they're younger than you, they're a younger sister.
Oh, of course.
I agree, Anita. I think we might wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining in today, John. We've all really appreciated it, and we all enjoy your wisdom. Unfortunately, the Spanish people will have to wait for the interpretation to come out.
Yeah, I hope this has been helpful. You know, I have a mission in life, so-called, and that is to stop people from talking about stuttering or stammering and get them to talk about holding back and being able to see the problem for what it is, for what it really is, not some kind of a speech disability caused by some unknown genetic factor or what have you. And so if I have a mission, I guess that's as close as I can state it. But my mission is to help people have as much fun as possible.
What's the name of your book again, John?
It's called Redefining Stuttering.
And it's a free download too, isn't it?
What the struggle to speak is really all about. Yes, it's free. It's in English, French, Spanish, Russian. Interesting how they did the Russian version. A bunch of people in their 30s got together in Moscow and divided the book into segments, and each person took a segment and translated it, and then they put it all together. It's the best looking of all the books because they came out with a very polished edition. But you have to be able to speak Russian to read it.
That would help.
But what's nice about the internet is that you can download the whole book in about 2.5 minutes or 2 minutes or so.
So raise your hand if you don't have John's book. Excellent. All right, John, we might leave it at that. So thank you very much for joining in today.
Sure. If anybody has questions, would like to talk with me, my email address, if you'd like to write it down, is jcharr1234@aol.com. And I'm also available on Skype. I have a lot of really great conversations with people on Skype, and if you would like to talk, you don't have to make a big production out of it. Just let me know when you want to talk on Skype, and we'll talk, and you'll see a bigger picture of me and you than when you have so many people on at the same time. But I think this is great. I be able to do this.
Unfortunately, I think the Spanish thing didn't work out as well as they were hoping.
Well,
Cynthia, how did you go trying to type in all the speaking?
Well, if this was recorded, then somebody can translate it in a leisurely manner if they're so inclined.
Actually, we have a team: Cesar, Valentina, and me, and Bruno too. We were translating some of the great phrases and the information you share with us.
Good work, Cynthia. Well done.
Pleasure.
Right, people, it's 3:20 in the morning in Australia. I'm getting pretty tired, so I'm going to go. Thank you all for letting me host this session, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. And if you want to stay on and talk to each other, you're welcome to, I guess. But
Yeah.
from me, it's good night.
I'll stay around and talk. I'll tell you, in this COVID world, I want you to know I have not been out of my house in 5 months. Because at my age, I'm a prime candidate
so much,
for getting this. So I don't want to tempt fate. So anybody I can talk to on...
You can also talk to John.
Okay. Bye-bye. Nice to see you all.
Sure, Neil. Bye. Take care.
You can stay here, John. John, you can stay here and talk
no,
to whoever wants to stay and talk to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Quiero agradecer desde Argentina a John y desde la Asociación Argentina de Tartamudez y toda la gente maravillosa que hoy estuvo acá. Fue un honor y nuevamente muchas gracias. Ariel de Argentina.
Ariel is thinking. Oh. He's saying thank you to you all for this meeting from the Association of Argentina. He's very happy.
Well, great. I'm so pleased that you were able to attend and to meet you all.
Está feliz de que hayan podido estar aquí.